What's up, everybody? I am glad to be back home. As you all probably know, and you should know by now, I was in Los Angeles interviewing Tulsi Gabbard. I attended a few of her events. Obviously, talked to her and her staff. I obviously knocked out a couple of segments with the Convo Couch, who is also obviously on the MCSC network. If you have not checked them out, make sure you go do so. You can also subscribe to their YouTube page. We also sat down with Kim Iverson to basically talk about everything that we experienced with Tulsi Gabbard, with her campaign, what we thought of her as a person and what we thought of her as a politician. Make sure you go check that out. And obviously, I met up with Jimmy Dore while I was down there. We were both at Tulsi Gabbard's major event in LA, where it was open to the public, of course, and he was the MC and I was one of the speakers. We had a good time chatting it up in the green room. Congratulations to him. He had some big news happen to him, where he took short-term loss, but overall it's going to be great for his career. So excited for Jimmy. Make sure you check out his channel if you have not yet. The Jimmy Dore Show is the channel you want to look for. And of course, before we get started, I want to go ahead and once again ask everybody, she's so close. I believe at this point she's less than 5,000 donations away. Less than 5,000. When we first talked, when we first started pushing this, she was less than 20,000 donations away. That was a week and a half ago, maybe almost 2 weeks ago now. And now she's less than 5,000 away. So this trip to LA did a lot for Tulsi Gabbard's campaign, and I'm excited to see her on the debate stage, as you should be. You can help her get there by donating to that link in the description. $1 is all it takes. $1 from a new donor is all it takes to get Tulsi on that debate stage. And I know with your help, we can help her do that. And this segment is another reason as to why Tulsi Gabbard should absolutely be on that debate stage. So we sat down with Tulsi Gabbard and the MCSC network. Myself, who hosts Mi Casa es Su Casa, and then Fiorella Isabella and Pasta Jardula, who hosts the Convo Couch. We had a joint interview of Tulsi Gabbard, and she spoke of a lot of things. But this particular subject is one that I would have thought caught the attention of all the major progressive political pundits, commentators, journalists, and even the mainstream, right? And I'll explain why, it's for the mainstream, why it should be that way. But for the progressive journalists, for the progressive pundits, if you will, I would have assumed that this would have been something that they would have jumped upon immediately. Given that most of them are, of course, Bernie supporters, given that most of them have experienced election fraud, have seen election rigging, and have covered election injustice really for the last 2.5 to 3 years. As you all know, election justice and election fraud is something that I am passionate about pursuing, and also passionate about exposing as well, at least as far as the fraud is concerned. And what we saw this weekend was that there is actually a presidential candidate with a plan to deal with election injustice and election fraud. Take a look at this interview, or part of the segment of this interview with Tulsi Gabbard that was conducted by the MCSC network.
I want to talk a little bit about election integrity.
Good.
In 2016,
We're glad to hear.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, anyway, I want to let you ask your question, but I'm so glad that you're bringing it up, because it is rarely brought up with the intent of actually addressing election security. So forgive me for interrupting you.
No, perfect. Thank you. In 2016, I and many Bernie Sanders supporters, as you know, experienced a lot of mishaps with our ballots, not being counted, provisional ballots, and also a random switching of your registration at the last minute, especially in California. It was a huge issue. It was a huge issue nationwide. So I want you to speak a little bit more about the Securing America's Election Act.
Thank you. Yeah. There's a couple of issues that you brought up. The issues with making it as hard as possible for people to be involved in our democracy is a challenge that we continue to face. We saw it in 2016. We saw it in the 2018 midterm elections, where these obstacles are put in place to try to prevent people from voting who are not going to vote on quote unquote your side.
Right.
to strengthen our democracy, we've got to make sure that we're doing all we can to make it as easy and as accessible as possible and remove as many of these barriers as possible, whether or not the voters in one location or another are going to be voting for your team or not. So that's an issue that we need to try to address. The issue of election security and the legislation that I've introduced, the Securing America's Elections Act, is critical to be passed before the 2020 elections because it speaks to the biggest vulnerability that we have in our democracy right now, which is a teenager has been proven to hack into our election, a replica of our election system in less than 15 minutes. I think you guys are obviously aware of the DEF CON hacking conference and the report that they put out that said, hey, look, we had, I think she was a 14 or 15-year-old girl from Florida who hacked into a replica of their election system in just a few minutes.
So it seems to me that this seems to be a pretty commonsensical idea. I don't feel like Tulsi Gabbard had to reach too much into the old brain bag and come up with this brand new idea, something that has never been invented or talked about. She just said, you know what? It seems that everybody has a problem with our elections and everybody feels like they're illegitimate because all facts show that they are illegitimate. And she said, you know what? I'm going to do something I feel like should be common sense that everybody should be on board with. She introduces this resolution, which would be an amendment to the current bill. Now, the resolution, as she has said, is called the Securing America's Elections Act. Now, some of you who have been following this channel for quite some time, probably like, well, I feel like I've heard that before. Have I heard that name before? Actually, you have. You heard it here when she introduced it the first time. The reason why you haven't heard it again other than here is once again because it seems like some people might not want you knowing who your options are and what your options are involving the presidential race, but two, the nonpartisan pursuit of election justice, or at least what should be a nonpartisan pursuit of election justice. It seems to me that there are people telling untruths, not doing their research, and really mischaracterizing the impact domestically that Tulsi Gabbard could have as a president. We always talk about her foreign policy, and as fantastic as her foreign policy is, she understands that if she wants to get her foreign policy agenda taken care of, also if she wants to see any of the things she advocates for domestically, whether we're talking about Medicare for all, or we're talking about net neutrality, these things can only be passed if you have other people who see eye to eye with the populist progressive agenda like you do. So she introduced this legislation that would make sure that every single ballot turned in, regardless if it's by a machine, regardless if it's by what do they call them? Absentee ballots. If it's by mail-in absentee ballot, even if you have to do some provisional ballots, every single one of them would be voter verified and hand counted after the initial tabulation. I don't see what's controversial about this. Now, hear me out, people. It is said that Tulsi Gabbard is not the best on domestic policy. It is widely argued, and not necessarily that it's wrong to argue this, because there's plenty of evidence to justify that side of the argument as well. It is widely argued that Bernie Sanders is the best, quote unquote, on domestic policy. Now, I'm a very solution-based thinker. That's how I think. Some people are all about acknowledging the problem, and they have a solution, but they don't necessarily have the solution that will have to take place in order for their solution to come into fruition. In other words, Bernie Sanders has fantastic domestic ideas. He does. And he even has gotten some of them passed. Ones that will affect many people in a microcosm, right? Like the Bezos Act, for example. that helps the people from Amazon, and that's great for everybody else because we don't want we need to regulate people like Amazon, but that doesn't really change the entire system as it's currently constructed. Now, this, however, would make sure that no matter whose domestic policies you want to pass, whether it's Bernie Sanders, whether it's Tulsi Gabbard's, whether it's Ro Khanna's, whether it's Ilhan Omar's, AOC's, et cetera, this will ensure that the people who are in office wanting and demanding that bold bills are introduced, this will make sure that those people can get in office. Why has no one else, no one who considers themselves a progressive or anyone who considers themselves a populist, why has this bill not been spoken up? Why have we not seen progressive pundits, commentators, and or journalists talking about this wall to wall, giving it 24-hour coverage? Why had this bill that was reintroduced on March 28th and was originally introduced in 2017, why has this resolution that would effectively change a bill that was introduced in 2002 about making sure that elections were not hackable? It seems that that bill did the opposite. But why was this amendment? Why is this resolution, this legislation? Is this not being talked about wall to wall, 24-hour coverage? Think of it like this. Say if you're into the whole Russian Putin conspiracy theory, because that's what it is. The Putin conspiracy theory that Putin hacked the elections. He worked with Trump to hack the elections. Hack. Wouldn't this legislation help in securing and making sure that it will help in securing the election at the ballot box? It would help in ensuring that Americans are verifying their own vote. So that even if, quote unquote, Putin or somebody else, like, I don't know, members of the Democratic and Republican Party, for example, it would ensure that these people would not be able to hack the elections without getting caught doing so at the bare minimum. So if you're a quote unquote Russiagate conspirator, co-conspirator, if you believe in that theory, it's been disproven, but if you believe in that theory, why would you not be strongly advocating for this legislation? Out of curiosity. Because the last time I checked, Tulsi was crazy, right? Tulsi doesn't know what she's doing. Tulsi's not great on domestic policy. It seems that in addition to, all the other domestic things that she's introduced, whether it be expanding protections to the LGBTQ community, expanding civil rights protections. In other words, they cannot be discriminated against officially in the workplace or in housing and things like that. She's done that, which would be amazing if it got passed. In addition to Medicare for all, which obviously she's a strong advocate for. She also understands that in order for any of these things to get passed, this has to be done. She said in this interview, as you just heard, this has to get done before 2020. How else do we know if our elections are secure? And this should have been done before 2018 elections were concluded. But once again, hand-counted paper ballots is the reason why. Because she's already telling you, if you want to keep your machines, that's fine. That way, those profit margins for those machines and the speed at which reporting is put out, that doesn't have to be changed. But understand something. With automatic audits and hand-counted paper ballots, the whole point of the machines is all of a sudden rendered useless. It's so that they can rig elections, not simply so that it would be quicker to report on them. It was to rig the outcome. And because this rigging is conducted by not only the Republican Party, but the Democratic Party as well, as Tulsi Gabbard discusses, it should go without saying that both parties, all politicians who have bought into the duopoly and what it can do for them and what it can do to them if they do not play ball with the duopoly, it shows that Tulsi is outside of that duopolist spectrum. She's going to do what needs to be done, regardless of party, regardless of power, whoever is in power or in charge at the time. She's going to meet with whoever she needs to meet to broker peace. And overall, it seems to me like she's going to keep making the waves. When she said, I mean, the nonpartisan waves, the waves that have even convinced some Trump supporters early that they want to shift all their support to Tulsi and away from Trump because Tulsi is who they thought Trump was supposed to be. Like, but, you know, anti-interventionist, anti-regime change, bring jobs back, fix the crumbling infrastructure, put money back into the pockets of the working class and the middle class, create equity, want substantive immigration reform, things like that. A lot of people have been leaving the Trump camp and coming to Tulsi. A lot of people have obviously, you know, the independents are already strongly and firmly in her camp, but we're starting to see a revolution take place, a subsequent revolution to the one that Bernie started, where he stood up to the establishment. But Tulsi seems to be standing up to everybody, by standing up for everybody. And I love seeing when she said, "Oh man, that's good. That's good. I'm glad we got to talk." We are kind of like, "Oh snap, that's good." And we usually politicians get a little bit antsy, get a little bit edgy, you know, when you bring up election justice, because they're like, "Oh no, please don't talk about that. My party doesn't want me bringing up election justice unless we're talking about the other party." Like with Stacey Abrams, right? Even you know, Bernie Sanders, as much as I got a lot of love for him, even he has only brought it up when he can try and link the Russiagate conspiracy to Trump, when he talks about the Stacey Abrams election and when he talks about gerrymandering. But these are nonpartisan issues. The Democratic and Republican Party has shown that they both have the propensity to rig elections. And it seems to me that it's only been Tulsi Gabbard to have validated independents, the ones who don't necessarily have the voice in either of the parties, and the people who have been rigged and cheated by both parties. She's the only one who's validated the voices of everyone, not just the people who quote unquote play for her team. So shout out to Tulsi freaking Gabbard. Once again, donate to her campaign. You can do so by clicking on the link. I'll put it in the comment section, pin it to the top. She's so close. Help her reach that goal. Share this video. And remember, people, more than anything else, find your balance. Peace. Thanks for watching that segment of Mika Says Sukasa. Don't forget to join us on Roku and catch our Roku exclusives. Also, help us reach our goal of 500 patrons on Patreon. You can also follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and JustNForm.com. But more than anything else, always remember, find your balance. Peace.